Can everyone see my screen? Awesome. All right. Welcome back. I'm glad to be back at LJC Lightning Talks. Today we're going to talk about ZGC, and we're going to have a quick look at the improvements in ZGC that happened in JDK 16. So it's sort of a quick look before another JDK long-term support release planned, as far as I remember, in September. So my name is Rafał Foltyński, and I am a senior developer in LMAX. We are hiring. Go to careers.lmax.com if you'd like to switch your currently exciting job to another super exciting job. Do I have to mention that you have to mention me? I definitely should mention that it will not help your chances. But if you mention me, that would be nice. I'm also an open source contributor. Feel free to visit my GitHub page to see what I'm working on right now. So without further ado, what is ZGC? So ZGC is a low latency garbage collector. If you're not aware what a garbage collector in Java is, I highly recommend you to go to some Google pages and look it up. The ZGC is a concurrent compacting single generation region-based NUMA-aware collector, which basically makes it fast. And by fast, I mean really fast. So we're going to have a look at some comparisons between the default garbage collection in Java 11, which is G1 GC, and ZGC in Java 11 first. And then we're going to move forward and see what sort of improvements happened in JDK 16 that made ZGC even faster. So my baseline test was literally taken off for my project. Ran with this humongous command. And what this baseline test basically does, spinning up a VM with 8 gigabytes of heap, pushing 1 million logs at the rate of 10,000 logs per second to Elasticsearch. Each message has roughly 4 kilobytes, and the serialization is extremely wasteful. When you get familiar with my project, you'll know that the Jest project uses JSON strings because we all love serializing serializing our objects to JSON strings, right? If you'd like to avoid that, switch to HC module, but this is not a topic of today's talk. So starting from the actual allocation rate in JDK 11 with G1 GC versus ZGC, allocation rates are roughly the same, and that more or less proves that the test does more or less the same in both cases. The allocation rate is roughly 1 gigabyte per second. What it causes G1 to do is G1 spends roughly 9 milliseconds on average in a garbage collection phase called stop the world, which is not bad, which is not good when you would like to have your application be super responsive and super quick. In this test took like roughly 2 minutes, and half percent of this time, as you can see by the throughput, 99.444%, 0.5% of the application time was spent to do to execute the stop the world phase. When it compares to ZGC in Java 11, the overall pause, the average pause was much quicker, under 1 millisecond, actually roughly 230 microseconds, which is already a smashingly good result. I have to say that this test might be a bit biased, but numbers should check out on most of your workloads, because the main purpose of ZGC upon creation was to get the garbage collection pause below 10 milliseconds. Then they amended this goal. They wanted to go under 1 millisecond, and this goal was already achieved in JDK 11. Looking further, breakdowns of pause and concurrent time, ZGC spends a lot more time in a concurrent phase, which is mainly caused by moving a lot of stuff that was usually done in the stop the world phase to some concurrent threads, which eventually brings down the total time spent in G1 versus ZGC from roughly 700 milliseconds to 17 within this 2-minute period that was needed to execute this test. So how did ZGC made it happen? So first of all, JEP 376 introduced a feature called concurrent thread stack processing, which allowed stuff that was usually done in the stop the world phase to be executed concurrently. Also, bulk allocation and initialization of forwarding tables allows to make this phase a lot faster. And in place, there were some improvements in in-place relocation. ZGC needs some free region of the heap to actually perform the compaction. There were some improvements in this area. However, concurrent thread stack processing and bulk allocation of forwarding tables were the main features that allowed ZGC to improve in JDK 16. So let's have a look at the numbers. Our allocation rate is still roughly the same, but the actual numbers dropped from 230 microseconds to 5 microseconds per GC per pause. This is the actual stop the world pause. So if your application stops for 5 microseconds every now and then, it's fairly decent. When I saw those results, it basically blew my mind. Again, breakdown on the pie chart shows a lot less time spent on pauses, and the total time spent across all 2 minutes of this test run, it dropped from 70 milliseconds to roughly 400 micros to execute all the stop the world pauses in the latest JDK 16 ZGC. If you're not excited about JDK 17, I think this is the best time to start to get excited. A few sources if you want to follow up and learn some more about ZGC and execute this test for yourself. That's all I have for you today. Thank you very much. And do you have any questions?
I'll be the one asking the same question that you probably get every time that you do this talk. I missed about 1 year on this low latency garbage collector development thing. And the last time that I checked, people were still, oh, there's Xanadu from OpenJDK and there's ZGC, and no one knew what was the one that was going to prevail because ZGC didn't have, like, it is basically it has a single generation and has some design things like this, and Xanadu was not very mature. So you know how this evolved. Is ZGC the new standard for low latency? Where are things at the moment?
To be honest, I don't know where Shenandoah versus ZGC battle stands at the moment. I don't think that they should be that only one of them should prevail, because they work a bit from the memory allocation graphs that I saw. They work a bit differently, and they adapt to your memory allocation rates a bit differently. So what I would recommend what I would recommend is always heavily test your application using both garbage collectors and make the decision make the decision on your own. However, whether you switch Shenandoah or ZGC, you will most probably end up having much much smaller, much shorter GC pauses regardless. So whichever you choose, it will be better than Chuan. Which one prevails? I don't know.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that, Raf. Thanks, Anthony, for the question. Very much appreciate that. I've got to be honest, as somebody that can't write hello world, a lot of that tech details, it's not something that I wanted to try and take notes on. So I'm hoping that with this audience that landed with a lot more. But I tell you what, actually, it did make me think the garbage collector is something we used to have a lot of talks on. It was always extremely popular as a subject within the LJC. And it's been a while since we've had something, I think. So yeah, well, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
I agree.
Could you pop the links down in the chat window, just in case anyone does want to follow up on any of that?
Sure, absolutely.
Also, so another reason that we do these lightning talks is for new speakers. So Raf's not a first-time speaker; we've spoken before, but it's for new speakers to get feedback and hear any parts of the presentation that landed well, anything that that you particularly thought went really well or learned from it, anything like that. So we'll put a link up in the chat window as well. If anyone's happy to share some feedback, then please do. A lot of it's multiple choice, but just helps give a bit of feedback back to the speaker. So thanks very much, Raf. Okay, Carly, I think you're up next. Are you ready to go?
Yes, we are. Cool. Can people see my screen? Wonderful. Okay. So I do see a couple of familiar names and faces, but for those who don't know me, my name is Carly Richmond. I am a senior UI engineer at Morgan Stanley. But I'm going to start today with a question. So you can either use the little thumbs up or you can just give me a wave if you're on camera. How many of you have participated in a Sprint Zero exercise before? I've got iffies and thumbs down is what I can see. And you know what? That's cool. That's perfect, because I'll let you in on a little secret. Last year, I had to arrange my first Sprint Zero and I hadn't participated in one either. It's a very niche topic is what I've found. And that's why I'm here talking to you today. I'm going to share with you my confessions of a Sprint Zero. So if you do have to go through the exercise, you know roughly what's going to happen. So the first thing that I want to admit to is, as I said, I didn't really know what it was. I had heard definitions and things, but that was about it. So when I had to go and start arranging one, I didn't really know where to start. And how I ended up doing that was I went and asked for help, which is what we normally do. And there was two people in particular who were super helpful and basically informed my next steps. The first was an agile coach who actually started working with our team only a few weeks before, but had lots of transformation experience. So that proved to be good for us. And then the second person was actually a Scrum Master who had recently just went through a Sprint Zero, had been in my shoes before. And he was great because he gave me his session list. He explained, what resources he used for planning it. And he also shared the artifacts that the team generated. And ultimately, it was the contributions of these two people that wrote my definition of what Sprint Zero is. It's a small segment of time where a team collaborates together to try and prepare themselves to deliver value in the upcoming delivery sprints by any means that they see fit. So the next thing I should admit, and I still see a lot of people have this misconception, that Sprint Zero is just about building a backlog, get your list of stories together and go on your merry way. And I'm sure we all know there's a lot more to our jobs than just knowing what the list of tasks are to do. There's other things that make us effective in working together. So, as promised, I will share with you my session list, and you can use this as your cheat sheet for future Sprint Zeros. So the first thing we did was we held a kickoff. Today, we've got the Tokyo Olympics starting with a big opening ceremony. And if you're changing your product vision and going through such an exercise as Sprint Zero, you need to make a bit of a song and dance about it. So we did the same. We basically opened and explained what our new product vision was, and we allowed people to ask questions about it. We also covered a session generating team norms. And you might have heard of working agreements. You might have one in your team already. But basically, it's a set of principles that govern how you're going to work together. And everyone needs to have a say in that, because different things are important to different people. Some people love no meeting Fridays. They want to get off Zoom. So you need to make sure that your norms represent everyone. We also covered definitions of ready and done and made sure it aligned across the entire team and the product owner as well. And that cleared a lot of misconceptions up for us. We also documented our ceremony calendar. This team was distributed across 3 time zones, which means you have a very small window in which to arrange your Scrum ceremonies. So we did that formally. And we also did that to kind of help people out who were juggling a lot of stuff during the pandemic too. Then we also had a session on tooling and work management. It might seem obvious, but it's not always the case that you know which tools you want to use. Is it Jira? Is it Trello? Are you using Slack versus something else? We also covered delivery metrics and KPIs. We always talk about tracking velocity, but there's more to it than that. You need to make sure that you've got metrics that can track your product value as well. And then we had some kind of very specific sessions for this team. So we covered the user personas and stakeholder analysis so that we got to know the key users of the system a little better. And then because it was a financial system, we also had a little bit of background knowledge on the financial products, which was actually really useful because this team were doing BDD as well. And that actually factored into a lot of the specifications that they were writing. But there's going to be other stuff. I'm sure you guys are thinking right now, oh, I would have this or that. And I certainly can think of things that I would add and remove. And not every team is the same. So it's definitely worth thinking about if there's anything else to add in there. Now, last thing to admit, it's really difficult to tell that Sprint Zero was successful. And we did try. We had a retrospective a few days later, but it was too early for us to actually figure out because we hadn't started delivering value yet. To go back to that definition, how do we know that it was successful if we're not delivering value yet? So the moment when we actually realized that Sprint Zero was successful was 2 months after it finished, when we had our first sprint review, which is a very long story. I won't go into it here. But we knew it was successful because we had a really good session to the extent where there was so many questions and feedback coming through that we had to arrange a further 30 minutes the next day to go through everything else that's popping up. And that was the point when we looked back and we could see, you know what, Sprint Zero was worth it. It had helped us with a lot of problems that we'd had before. And ultimately we learned a lot from it. So thank you very much for listening to my confessions of Sprint Zero today. We obviously covered what Sprint Zero is. We covered that cheat sheet for the session list, and we talked about how you figure out when it's successful. If you're looking for some afternoon coffee reading, I've written a paper on it if you want to check it out. Otherwise, I'm happy to answer questions just now, or you can reach out at the handles that are there too. Thank you.
Ollie, I love that idea of having the QR thing for scan for paper. You're good and good, better and better at this. Hey, does it?
That was Karsten's suggestion a while ago.
I like it. I like it. Does anyone have any questions at all for Carly off the back of that?
Alex?
Feel free to just unmute your
Carly?
mic. Alex got his hand up. Sorry, yeah. Alex, go.
Sorry. Carly, do you have any particular references that you use for Agile as a whole? Is there like a website or a book that you really like?
I've got a rather large list of things. In terms of Sprint Zero, I really struggled actually, because we had some internal specific stuff, but outside there's next to nothing about it, which is part of the reason I pulled this talk together. But in terms of general things, there's loads. I think my top 2 favorites, one I'm reading at the moment, one I just finished, The Dream Team Nightmare. Anybody that's interested in agile coaching and also loves those books from the 80s and the 90s where you choose your own adventure. That's a really great one because it talks about all the principles, but you play the game along. And I'm also reading the Zombie Scrum Survival Guide at the moment, which is really good. It talks about different anti-patterns with Scrum. And also it's got some nice zombie book and movie references if people like that kind of stuff.
I guess what I'm hearing is that you effectively are picking and choosing what works for you and your team. Is that fair to say?
I think that is fair. I mean, I've worked with different teams. I've done Scrum, I've done Kanban, I've done a hybrid.
I still don't know the difference.
yeah, we can take that one off. Like, but I find that not one trick works for every team anyway. So that's why I find retrospectives and improvement are so important, because there's stuff that works for me and works for one team I worked with, but another team, it doesn't work for them and we try something different. So I find that just finding books with techniques, so things like Zombie Scrum Survival Guide is good for that, and Fixing Your Scrum is good for that as well. Just getting into the habit of noticing those anti-patterns and then trying things out to improve them is generally how I go about things.
Thank you very much.
Great, thanks, Alex. Thanks, Carly. Carly, are you all right to stick around after the next couple of talks just to talk about you did a talk this week, didn't you?
I did, yes.
Are you all right if I ask you a few questions on that afterwards?
Yeah, sure. I'm free. That works.
Cool. All right, bro. Okay. So next up we have Anthony. Anthony, are you there? Are you ready?
Can't hear you, Anthony.
Anthony, do you want to swap places with Alex at all, or are you? We can't hear you. Show of thumbs. Are you? You're good. Should we get Alex to go now? No. Okay, we'll wait for you. Okay.
It's always the way, isn't it?
Literally, honestly.
He did test it out earlier. He did, honest.
It's Zoom.
Can you guys hear me now?
It plays tricks, and yes, we can, mate.
My computer froze. Yeah, nice. Okay, can you guys see my screen? Okay, let me hope that this still works when I do this. Can you see my screen? Can you see my terminal? Cool, great. Okay, so today I'm going to be speaking about using Python with GraalVM in 5 minutes, if I'm able to do it. Before we get started, there are a lot of new people here and I've been away from the community for a while. So my name is Anthony. I was the first member of the aspiring speakers group. So this whole thing started with me complaining about the pandemic to Barry. And I don't remember if it was him or me that said, oh, this might be a good suggestion, a good opportunity for new speakers to get some experience. And then Barry ran with it and created this whole thing, but I'm officially the member #1 here. Other than that, I contribute code to GraalVM. At the moment, I'm working as a principal developer at a company called ComplyAdvantage. Nothing that I say or do has anything to do with them, but we are hiring as well. So feel free to reach out if you're looking for an opportunity. Okay, what is GraalVM? I could talk about this for 1 hour. The short version is it's a JVM. You can basically look at it here. You can mix and match programming languages. So you can mix your Java with Python. You can mix it with Ruby, LLVM languages like C and C++. Use the best tool for the job, right? And it can do ahead of time compilation. So every other Java developers that are salty with the Java is slow meme, now we can get like great startup times and things like that in Java as well. So it is fast. For the long version, we had a talk about this from Chris Foster from Oracle. Go and watch his talk. He'll explain to you in 1 hour what GraalVM is. I'll be talking about how to use Python with Java, but the first question that everyone asks me when I speak about this project is, don't we have like Python running in Java already? And yes, we do. It's called Jython. It's awesome. The problem is that it is stuck in version 2.7.2 of Python forever, and there's no support for Python 2 anymore. So yeah, I love Jython, but I don't know how this will work. GraalVM isn't at the same level of maturity with Python that Jython was, but it is trying to backport some of the features that Jython implemented already. Okay, so getting straight to the point, you can download the GraalVM from their website, or you can watch my talk from 1 year ago about ASDF. You can just use ASDF to install GraalVM with 2 commands that it's showing the slides here. Once you have Python, once you have GraalVM installed, GraalVM has its package manager. It's called GU. And you can basically install Python. And if you want native images, which means binary support, you also install the native image package. Once you do that, you may want to export some environmental variables just to make your life easy. And after you finish installing this, you are officially in Python land. You can create virtual environments. You can activate those virtual environments. You have pip to install the packages that you want. It's basically Python running on Java, right? I was meant to make up Monty Python's reference, but yeah, I lost the opportunity. So let's just run some code then. The first thing that I'm going to do is to basically go to my console here. And I had a FizzBuzz application, basic Python, that will solve the most famous coding exercises on interviews, right? So if I type Graal Python, this is my Python interpreter. I can import from FizzBuzz, import FizzBuzz, and I can FizzBuzz up to 100. And here you go. It works. It's Python is running on top of a JVM. More than that, what is awesome about GraalVM is that you can make it interoperable with Java. So you can make Python call Java. So I have here this GraalVM is awesome py file, which is basically a swing application that displays a small logo using Java from Python, right? So I'm going back to Graal Python, but this time I want JVM support, and I'm also enabling some Jython features that makes my life easier. Startup time takes a little bit longer because now it is starting lots of features related to Java. And just 1 second, I'm going to paste this code here. And here we are. This is a Java application running on Swing, written in Python. Okay. More than that, we can go full cycle. We can have Java calling Python and Python calling Java. So I wrote a small class here called can I has Java can has Python. And all that it is doing is it is opening this Python file, creating an interop context, and running the Python file that is actually starting that Windows. So I can compile my code as usual, and I can run this this project as usual from Java. And give it 1 second. Here is, here's our window. So we have Java calling Python, calling Java, displaying a window here. Okay. We're almost running out of time. So the last thing is, this is all very interesting, but like we want to do it for a reason, right? And we want it so that we can deploy things in the cloud, and Java has a slow start time because it has to start the JVM. So we want to make Java native, and we can also make Python native by consequence using GraalVM. So that's why you have native image support. I'm not going to go through this step by step, but you need to generate some configuration. There are some limitations. All of the features that we know and love about class loading, dynamic proxies, and dynamic like bytecode enhancement doesn't work in GraalVM because he has to know upfront like the Java classes that you are loading. So there are some limitations here, be dragons basically, but you generate this configuration and you run this native image command here. It will take a while. It will basically examine all of the classes, not only from the Java side of things, but also the Python side of things that is implemented in Java. And it will finally, at any minute now, at any second, it is almost there. It's generated a binary image. So Java can has Python is my binary image. This I'm running Linux, but if it was Windows, it will generate a Windows executable file. And now I can just run my program and it is calling Python. Yeah, that's it for me. I think that was all. I just went over time by like 5 minutes, but other than that, fine.
Thank you very much, Anthony. Really appreciate that. And it's true. Member number 1. That takes me back to last year and very dark days. But yeah, here we are. I don't know, Dom. I don't know if you're still out there. Quite how many? Is this number 30 now that we've done?
Yeah, this is number 30.
What you started, Anthony. Look what you started.
What you started, I just complained about stuff to you.
It's true. Okay, cool. Does anyone have any questions at all for Anthony?
I have a quick question for you, Anthony.
Yeah.
I'm interested, if the Java code throws an exception, how is that like propagated into the Python app that's kind of running the Java app?
Okay. So there are some documentation about this in the GraalVM side of things, but basically there is an interop API. The same way that you have the context builder, you can have bindings saying that I'm exporting X, Y, and Z to Python, or I'm using X, Y, and Z from Python into Java. So you share those bindings, and from there on, you can share an exception. Sorry, your question was what if there was an exception in Python or if there was an exception in Java?
A Java exception.
Okay, so let's say that you have an IO exception, right? So you call a method, it throws an IO exception. You expose this binding for this method. It has a throw as IO exception signature. So on the Python side of things, you can use this context interop API to catch that exception in a Python block. It's cumbersome, but it is doable, basically.
Cool.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Anthony, and thanks for the question. Okay, finally then we have Alex. Are you ready, Alex? Are you good to go?
1 second, folks.
Just a reminder, of course, to share feedback. If you have any feedback about the talk so far, there's a link on there, or Dom, if we could pop another link to it, that'd be great to share. So yeah, other than that, Alex, over to you.
Hi, folks. If somebody could do a thumbs up if you can see my screen. Taichi's right. Okay. Those of you who've heard my talks before know that I'm fairly high level. I used to be a coder. I normally do architecture, and so now I'm treating you to a talk that has almost nothing to do with IT whatsoever. I should point out that my friend here is a fellow student, and she is in IT as well. So we're trying to say it is for you as well. Okay. Right, so what is Tai Chi? I sometimes say Tai Chi Chuan, that's more of an official name. Tai Chi is very common. It's a martial art invented in China many years ago, in theory legendary about 500 years ago, and it focuses on forms, which are a set sequence of moves that you learn and do, and you repeat them time and time again. And you do them very slowly at first and focus on the joints that get moved, the exact positions, your stance. And the idea is to improve your accuracy so that if you need to do them fast later on, you're going to do them correctly. Down the bottom left, there is a long story about, a legendary story about how Tai Chi was invented, where a monk saw a crane fighting a snake, and the crane was making circles with its wings and defeated the snake. Or I think it was a draw. No one. So Tai Chi is very good for self-defense. It aims at helping you with people punching you, grabbing you, doing that sort of thing. It's definitely not something for, say, dealing with knives or guns. You know, if you like that sort of thing, there's a whole variety of martial arts aimed at that. This is much more about just improving your confidence and hopefully getting out of that sort of situation. It's very commonly used to improve physical health, primarily joints and balance. So there's a whole bunch of exercises that you do to keep things flexible. And also it's good for mental health. It can be very relaxing, and there is a small amount of meditation involved as well. Something I forgot to say is that a lot of these photos I took at a competition, which we have once a year when COVID's not happening. These people are wearing their special Sunday suits. So you can actually do this sort of thing wearing just jeans and t-shirt, shorts, tracksuit bottoms, if you like. You don't have to wear the silk Chinese suits. So why am I telling you? Well, the point is that Tai Chi is a martial art that anybody can do, even Java developers, and it builds a certain amount of confidence in self-defense. You know, this is not something we hope you ever need to use. It's more of a case of, well, if you've actually had somebody in your face and throwing a punch at you slowly in practice, then you're better off and more able to both get out of the way and stop them from doing it again. And I think that one of the biggest problems that I find is definitely not everybody, is that IT people spend far too much time in your minds rather than the bodies. And so doing this sort of exercise can help connect you to your body and be more aware of it. Another thing to mention is that it's never too late to start. If you're already a sporty person, then I'm probably not going to tell you anything new. But if you're like me, you're a desk jockey, then don't feel that, oh, it's all passed me by. I never take selfies except when I'm standing in front of a bunch of people with spears. So why should you listen to me? Well, the thing is that I'm not actually a Tai Chi teacher in any way. I'm not getting any profit from this at all. I'm just a student. I'm a reasonably mature IT worker. I started learning about 7 years ago and didn't have any experience of martial arts, no organized fitness. I had done a tiny bit of Buddhist meditation, but frankly, you don't have to worry about that. You don't need to do it if you want. And just too often I'm just in my mind. So Wu style is the style of Tai Chi that I do. There's about 5 or 6, 2 very popular ones. I won't go into the whole details, but Wu style was invented about 100 years ago by the main bodyguard in the imperial palace in China. And he basically invented it to teach to his soldiers. And then I was always told his son then popularized it and actually trained other people as well. This is taken from my school's website, which the URL's down the bottom. I think I've pasted some URLs in the chat as well. So unsurprisingly, although I hinted at first Tai Chi is all about the forms, I was going to do a video of me doing these forms and then thought much better of it. So at the start of your lessons, you practice with some warm-ups. And these are all to do with freeing up joints, relaxing, making sure that you can turn properly, make sure you've got good stance, improving your balance, and there'll be a small amount of meditation as well. Typically, I don't think I would have done more than say 5 minutes in a normal session, but it's still better than nothing. Alongside Tai Chi, there's this thing called Qigong. Qigong is spelt in a number of different ways, and that's where you're typically doing something like a Tai Chi breathing exercise standing in one place. So you're encouraged to do Qigong if you do Tai Chi, but you don't have to. You know, you can just treat it as just as a set of exercises. And also at the same time, there is a certain amount of spiritualism and philosophy of the Tao. Hence, you'll quite often see the yin-yang symbol being used quite a lot. But don't worry about it. You don't have to be into that. Nobody's going to mind if you say, oh, that's all religious stuff and I don't want to listen to any of that. Don't worry about that. It's around, but nobody will force you to do it. Tai Chi is most often thought of as an individual thing, but it is actually can be done with others. So this is an exercise called pushing hands, where we typically stand one in front of another and push backwards and forwards, detecting the other person's weight and stability. And it can be done as a cooperative exercise or as a competitive sport, as you see here. The people standing around are mostly judges that are looking for the competitors being unbalanced and moving their feet when they shouldn't. There are some advanced forms. So here we have a fellow student, Jono, who's got I think a saber, and he's just practicing getting ready for his demonstration. And you've also seen spears, and I had some photos of a sword. I've never done these because they're too advanced for me. Don't think that you're going to jump in and do any of these straight away. Most of the time you're starting off just with hand forms that are basically just hands by yourselves. So what next? Well, I hope that I've intrigued you to some extent. So if you want more, there's probably a demonstration happening near you. at some point in the future. I hope next year that in London we'll have our annual competition again. And if you want to find a teacher, I recommend that you do find a registered teacher. Tai Chi Union, I think, is the main one that records Tai Chi teachers over the country. Don't just learn it from YouTube videos. You can find YouTube videos, but that's just to give you a flavor or to help you practice stuff that you've already learned. And do remember that all ages and abilities are welcome. We do have my school, we have a class for kids. And in theory, there are forms that you can do sitting down, even at your desk. We have here Jono demonstrating a seated form when he had a broken leg or a sprained leg. I'm not sure. I don't know if you can see his crutch on the ground. So thank you very much. I've pasted these links into the chat, and these are the credits of the photos. All the photos are mine, apart from the last one of Jono sitting down. Any questions, please? Everybody's gone silent. I can't see many people. I don't know if Barry wants to.
I'll ask one just for.
Thank you very much.
Okay, like how about overweight, not very healthy people like me? How hard it is to get into this?
That's a very good question, and I should state this is definitely no good for burning calories. It's not something to reduce your weight. I myself am a bit portly around the belly, and I can do this. In some ways, you should think of it as maybe more important for you if you're overweight, because you need to learn how to use your joints better and balance better as well. And hopefully this will encourage you to improve your weight. If you have actual damage to joints, then you need a good teacher who will know how to avoid making those worse. If you've actually come to Tai Chi from another martial art, something I've seen a few times is that people do the more extreme Bruce Lee style of martial arts, and they've actually hurt joints, whereas they can't do their normal style anymore, and they come to Tai Chi knowing that it's easier on the joints. I don't know if that answers your question. I feel like I rambled a bit, but
no, that's brilliant. That's really interesting, Alex. Do you know, I wasn't too sure what to expect. Obviously,
I wasn't either. So
no, your presentations can hit all sorts of different areas, can they? And
there's still a few things I haven't tried. So
formats. I like it.
I should explain that the video hopefully you're seeing, I don't know, hopefully it's not too jerky, is my my teacher's teacher doing it from quite a few years ago, and he's an expert and slightly larger of the belly, and he's going through the main form that we do, but this takes about 20 minutes, so I think I better shut up and let Carly take over.
Thank you very much. And yeah, no, it's really interesting, and I think especially for the first timers here, what it really shows is the variety of talks that you know, we have all sorts of things. Like obviously we've had some really highly technical talks, and then like the high level kind of agile talk, and now one that's just not about tech at all. And I think that's, you know, a lot of people spend a lot of time trying to think, what can I talk about? And I'll talk to Carly now, actually, if that's okay, because I know, Carly, you were sort of similar early on about that. But it is just this process of where you understand what you can talk about. So Carly, can you just share just a little bit from your side? Yeah, just to introduce it, actually. So Carly started speaking with us very early on in the group, and then just recently has been selected at conferences and has now kind of gone a long way with the speaking career. A huge advocate for people in speaking, and obviously has done really well with it. So a great person to speak to people that are thinking about it, watching today and thinking, maybe I could give that a go, of where it could go. So yeah, Carly, how's it been from your side?
Oh, it's been loads of fun. So I guess for anyone who hasn't heard me talk about my story before, I started talking last year. So what happened with me was I came back from maternity leave and thought, you know what, I want to do something for me. And I'd kind of wanted to do a bit of speaking just because I quite like going to conferences. I quite like sharing information with people and just generally talking, really. So I thought it would be a nice thing to get into. And I actually got introduced to this group from a mentor who's actually now my boss, Jim Goff. So he introduced me to this group, and I used it as like a lot of practice to do like little small lightning talks and build up some confidence. So I did a few of those. And then while I was doing that in the background, I kind of, at certain points, I would think I might have a topic to submit. You're obviously never sure because you're still having this kind of niggle in your head. Even now with the one I've just given this week, I've had that as well, which I can explain more about in a minute. But yeah, I've found that, you know, sometimes you just have to do it. And there's a lot of support from individuals in this group. They're like, Carly, just hit submit button. It's fine. So through that, I managed to I've had so far 2 conference slots. So I had one last year at the Agile Exchange, and then I had one this week at Agile 2021. Both have been online, so I can talk about that as well. But it's been really fun, and it's something I've actually found I really like doing. I like thinking about things and pulling a talk together and trying them out. So it's been a lot of fun. And I mean, you still get nervous. Like I was doing, as part of that talk thing, a Q&A on Wednesday, standing there just before we're about to go live, knees knocking together, just still a bit nervous. And it still happens, even though I've done several lightning talks and things, as Barry said. But it's been really a lot of fun, and I'm still submitting to things. I'm still looking for other areas to talk in, and yeah, I just find it's really fun.
Yeah, I remember speaking to Venkat about nerves, and obviously Venkat's spoken everywhere, all over the world, and you know, hugely popular. And somebody was putting a mic on his lapel or something, one of the organisers, and she said, "Oh, you look nervous. What's wrong?" And he said, "I'm about to give a talk." Like, to lots of people looking at me like this isn't something that ever properly goes away, right? Like you always get the you know, the adrenaline rush and that before it. So Carly, talk to me about topics. And obviously a lot of people watching will think, okay, maybe I can do it if everyone's there. You know, how do I look at my own life and experiences and stuff and figure out which bits I can deliver to other people and get that into a talk?
Yeah, I think there's a few things to think about. I think the first thing is make sure it's a topic that you're comfortable with and you feel, I'm not going to say that you're a total expert, but at least feel that you've got enough comfort to talk about it, and that, you know, you can maybe see some questions you might get asked and be comfortable knowing what to ask. A thing that's helped me more recently is actually just ask other people if they think the topic's interesting, because it's really easy to dismiss yourself and say, I don't think people are going to be interested in that. Because that Sprint Zero talk today, I was originally like that. I was like, no one's going to be interested in this. No one is really going to want to hear all about that. But the way I actually managed to get some help with that was through asking people. So I actually emailed a couple of people in work that I trust that are really strong Agilists. And I said, look, I'm thinking about submitting this talk. This is the rough outline. It's like a very rough abstract. And I was like, would you go to this? Would you sit and listen to this? And both of them came back and said yes, which is part of the justification for submitting it in the first place. And people are willing to say, you know, and be honest and say, look, actually, that would be interesting. But I think also if it's a topic you're passionate about, you'll find forums to get the message out as well. So my tips have generally been, I tend to tell stories of things that have happened to me and experiences, because those are different and they're unique. But I also ask people's opinions. I use like the Lightning Talks forum to get practice runs and test things out. And I found using those mechanisms is quite helpful. And also just chatting to someone saying, you know, would you go to this talk, or do you think this topic's interesting? Because that's the way you tend to find the good topics that people are going to want to hear about.
I think that's actually a really interesting point to talk about something that you personally find interesting. Like we hear that quite a bit. Speak about something that you're passionate about, but also, yeah, that you actually genuinely find something interesting, that if you're going to put together a good talk, then that's going to mean research. And if you're researching something you're bored about, then, you know, yeah, that's really good. And telling stories as well. I think it always goes down so well. Okay, just one final thing. In fact, if anyone's got any questions, feel free to just put them on the chat box there. But just one final thing that I wanted to know. Oh, sorry, you know, it's just skipped my mind the second I've said that. It's gone. Oh yeah, so anything that you personally have got from it within your career, within anything you've yet to people coming up to you afterwards and speaking to you, or making new connections, or internally or externally, or anything like that?
I've had quite a few benefits from it, actually. So I've worked at the same company for 10 years. So I find that a lot of my network is concentrated in, you know, that one company. And most of my network is technologists as well. But obviously, going to this group, I meet people from all sorts of different backgrounds that I've formed quite close connections with. And I've got a lot of support, not just for like the speaking stuff, but also for general work things as well. And I've also had very interesting conversations with people about topics that I'm passionate and interested in. So there's definitely a big network benefit. There's a confidence benefit, obviously. I'm definitely more confident in applying for talks now. I'm still going to have the scary submission button moment, but it's still something that I feel I got a lot more confidence, and I found something that I'm good at and I really enjoy. But it's also helped me with other things like my day-to-day work and things. So it helps me with, you know, having to form messages if I have to communicate at certain forums and things. And it's also helped me get the new move. So I moved back from a tech lead role to a senior front-end engineer role in March. And I wouldn't have got that without doing the speaking thing, because I ended up going to work for Jim. And obviously Jim's been a great mentor and things. So without forming that relationship, obviously wouldn't have got that job either. So there's been a lot of benefits.
Amazing, brilliant. All right, thank you so much for sharing. Well, everyone, you know where we are. If you're keen to follow in Carly's footsteps and go, if you're keen to speak at conferences, or just keen to dip a toe or even a toenail in the water and see what it's like, see if it suits you, then yeah, you know where you are. You've got Dom's email. Dom's definitely better to approach for this kind of thing. She's much more organized than I am. So yeah, so reach out to Dom if and when you can speak. Dom, our next one, is it on the 6th of August? Is that right?
Yeah, 2 weeks today.
2 weeks today. So yeah,
we have 2 or 3 spaces left.
Okay. And then every 2 weeks. So also, if you're thinking about at some point this quarter doing it, if you're thinking, yeah, you know, at some point, then again, Dom could show you the dates and walk you through when we could or couldn't. If you want help around topic choice, then we've got these Slack groups that you can talk in. We'll run these workshops as well. Any thoughts, any questions, anything at all, reach out. We've got a bunch of mentors that can help as well. So anything at all, if you're interested, let us know. Other than that, thank you everyone for coming. Hope you all enjoyed it, and we'll see you all soon.
Please volunteer to do some talks so that I don't have to do another one.
Yeah, same. Cheers. And thanks, Barry. Thanks, Dom, for organizing all of this.
Thanks, Barry. Thanks, Dom. Thanks.
Cheers all. See you.
See you,
Thank you guys. See you. Bye. Bye.